Hey everybody, Gurmy's Coaster Yard here, and in today's episode of Germanator Studios, we will be completing our Grand Hotel. And I've decided, as a nod to Germanator Studios, that we will call the hotel the Grand Germanator, kind of inspired by names like the Grand Floridian at Disney, or I think at Disneyland there is the Grand Californian Hotel. Don't quote me on that. However, in that spirit, I have decided to name this hotel the Grand Germanator. Um, but anyways, getting started, we are using the modular hotel technique that I've covered in a previous episode. So I'm sort of making up a quick hotel room here, and you'll notice for the little hallway pieces, I only placed two of them, and that was so when I flip this hotel 100, or when I flip the rooms 180 degrees, as you'll be able to see in a moment, um, it'll basically fit together like a puzzle piece, and the hallway would be one wide, and you can see that here. So anyway, um, I created a new modular hotel room to use for this project, and you can see me basically following the a similar layout to the original one we had painted on the ground. However, I decided I didn't want to go strictly by that layout because I knew it was not going to be exactly correct. So instead, I sort of I went with the same shape but built it out from the hotel. And you'll notice too that I left a couple tiles in between where I started coming out from the hotel and where the room starts. And that was just because of that front office space that sort of extends to the side a little bit. I did not want to have someone's room window looking out and seeing a wall. So I wanted the window to be able to look straight out and see, as far as it could. And you'll see in a little bit how we fill that space in. But anyway, we built up the layout we wanted for a floor here, and building off of that and building off of the modular hotels idea, I made that an entire custom scenery piece. And then here you can see me carefully building it up to a height of 5 tall to match the height of the rotunda, or the number of stories. And you'll see me here, I grab it again, and this piece is basically symmetrical on both sides. Um, and I build it up 5 tall on this side. However, I realized later on not building it all at once on one side would actually cost me a little more time later on. So eventually this will get deleted once I complete the left side of the building, and then I will resave that as a new custom scenery piece. But anyway, one thing that we are doing before we do that, and something that will help us finish off this building, is creating little end caps essentially for each wing of the building. And I knew on each one I wanted to have a couple of elevators, a staircase, and a little vestibule that you'll see me build in a moment. But I'll talk about that when I talk about it, or when I get to it, I guess. But anyway, that's what I was building up here. And the elevators are the same as every other elevator I've built, and their staircases are the same as the ones I built for our little outdoor hotels that we built a long time ago. And or they're basically the same. They're not identical. Um, I use different windows on the side, but for what it's worth, it's the same design. And then I built the staircase and the elevator shafts up by one tile. That way there could be roof access and access to the motors of the elevator shafts. And after that, I just went about finishing the rest of the build. And you can see I put two sets of double doors right along there. And that's because right in that spot I'm going to build a little vestibule. It's pretty common on buildings, especially with buildings that have a lot of ingress and egress happening at once, to have a vestibule just to help with climate control, among other things. So that's what I built there. And that's really the only part that extends that far off of that part of the building. And then for the rest of it, I just built up windows to get some nice light in there. And aside from not having a roof on here, this is more or less the final design. But you'll see in a moment So I, of course, forgot that I wanted to change the color of the roof to be gray to match all of the other flat roofs in the park. And then I just built up the little caps on the elevator shaft and the staircase. And then at some point shortly, I remembered. Well, here's the first thing I realized is I decided I wanted to have a slanted roof on the vestibule, um, just for the looks, really. And then I saved this, and then at some point here, I guess it was after I placed it everywhere around the building, but I realized that placing the office roof wall or the office roof edge pieces along the top of the hotel, especially the living area of the hotel, would not be consistent with the other hotel buildings I built. So here you can see me adjusting it, um, and basically, well, not yet. So I decided to delete all of these and go back to sort of our master copy, if you'll call it that. And what I ended up doing to make it similar, or to make it the same theme really, is I deleted all those edges and put 1/3 height slate walls along the edges and just used the normal flat office roof piece. And that way it could be consistent with the other buildings. And yeah, nothing more to explain there. So in a moment, you'll see me go back there and save that, just overwrite the previous save. One thing I forgot to do was bring out that tile one further outward to the left, and that resulted in the little doorway, the exterior door, um, not saving with that. So I have to go back in a moment and place all those doors back. I can't remember if I noticed that right away or not. Um, but yeah, right after that, I ended up. So you'll see me here. You might think I'm deleting this one piece at a time, but if you know me, you know that's not really how I do things. I'm a little more efficient than that. What I'm actually doing here is modifying this piece to be used to connect the main entrance rotunda, I should say, um, to these buildings. So I knew that would be another good place to have a staircase. And instead of having an elevator shaft there, though, since we have elevators in the rotunda, I decided to use that space to have a housekeeping slash janitorial closet. And then right next to it, we have a little alcove for the vending machines. And then just replacing those windows with a flat wall, since that will be an interior wall and not an exterior wall. And finally, I just adjusted the roof as it needed to be. And there you can see me saving that as its own scenery piece. I think I just named it the Grand Germanator slice because it's a little slice that's going in between those two spots. And yeah, that was pretty straightforward. And it's a good technique too to design things, or to either to design things where you can, modify, make small modifications to your advantage, or to look for places where you can do that. So anyway, now we are going along here and finishing off the sort of mini rotundas, I guess, in each wing of the building. And I did this by, I mean, it's similar to the other rotundas, but I just deleted the pieces that I didn't need, and then added in those girder pieces to look a little better along the base. And I did that on both rotundas before deciding to delete the one wing of the building and just place a completed one there. But here's two examples to see what I mean and how I did that, just so that way it wouldn't be the barren ground right there at the base of that rotunda, and it would be a little easier for guests to access. And here you can see me putting the roof along here, and you can see me preparing to make the same mistake by leaving the roof off of the edges here. Um, because in my head I'm thinking, all right, in a moment I'm just going to place the office roof edge pieces. And then I remembered, oh, wait a minute, no. I remembered that I already made that mistake. So here you can see me placing them all the way up to the edges. And one thing too that you'll see in a moment is I remembered working on the previous hotels that I had saved a little scenery piece that was at the right height. That was basically just my office or my edge piece, and you'll see what I mean when I get to it. But I basically placed that and modified it to work a little better for what I had going on here, and in a moment you'll see that. But basically, that just got rid of the headache of having to get the 1/3 height wall on the right edge for every single tile, and it just sped things up a little bit. So here's that piece, and it came with a flat office roof tile that I deleted just because I already had them in place and I didn't want to double stack them because that can work in some Z glitching. And you can see me placing those all along here. And as you can see, because it's sort of snapping to one edge of that tile that it's on, I don't have to find the edge every single time, and it is a lot less of a headache. And it's also less keys on the keyboard you have to hold down. In fact, it's none of them because the piece is defaulted to the height it's at. So all in all, it makes things a lot similar. And finally, we're taking some gray bricks or gray block walls that are 1/3 in height, and just doing our standard skylight fixture. And then along here, you can see me going along section by section, or maybe in just a moment you'll see it. Yes, the first thing I did was save this entire scenery, this entire wing of the building as its own custom scenery piece or custom structure. And then along here, slowly but surely, I deleted this section of the building, and I basically did it one arm at a time, just so that way I didn't overwork the system, and just to be cautious and to make sure I didn't delete anything I didn't want to. And then finally, I will go and grab that custom scenery piece and place it in the right spot in just a moment. And there it is. And then hopefully around this time is where I noticed that those doors are missing, but I don't remember exactly. No, I guess not. I think I noticed them when I go to adjust this painting on a fine-tuned scale. But as you know, I like to have concrete foundations to my buildings using the terrain paint. So that's what I was doing there. Basically just over painting or painting over the lines. That way I would know for sure that everything underneath the scenery would be painted the right color. And then I'm just going along with a smaller brush size, I guess you could call it here, and getting rid of all the spillover and replacing it with that standard grass color. And this is almost useless. I think anyone else would call this useless, but just I like to know. I guess you could call it an OCD thing. I don't have OCD, but it's it's the knowledge of knowing that the build is complete on every detail. I guess when you go through the effort of making something in great detail, uh, having the knowledge that that which can be seen is as well detailed as that which cannot be seen. It's just all the more comforting, and it helps me sleep at night. We'll put it that way. But anyway, there you could see where I just put those doors in, and of course, the one time it was actually happening, I missed it. Go figure. But anyway, what is next? One of these days I'll remember what I do next. Ah, yes. So here I'm just putting in some more emergency exits along the ground floor of our rotunda. Um, and of course, as you know, in this series, I like to include things like the emergency exits. I just like to consider those things when I work on these builds. And here you can see me starting to put little sidewalk paths. But at some point I remembered, oh wait, I want to, more exits right there, of course. Anyway, at some point I remembered, oh yeah, I want to put trees and shrubbery along the border of this building. And in a minute you'll see where I fly over to the transport hub to remind myself how I did that. But basically, I just alternate medium height, the medium-sized sugar pines with the green bushes, and I do that along certain edges of the building, but I'll try not to talk about that too soon. But here you can see me preparing the space for it. And there I go looking at the transport hub. Isn't it exciting? And then, yeah, just putting those in here along those front edges, really the edges without windows, or I guess like without transparent windows. Really, the edges that are not where people are going to be staying in rooms. Not that it matters to me whether or not there's a tree outside someone's window, but those are just sort of the areas where I didn't put them, at least for the time being. And as this all gets built up more, We'll see. We'll figure out how we want to approach all that. But in the meantime, I put these where I put them, so you're gonna have to live with it. And speaking of the future, I finally, I think, made up my mind as to what I want to do with the modern themed area of our theme park. And those of you who've been watching for that series or for that portion of the series, I apologize that I've taken such a break from it. This has definitely been a good side project, though, and but what I want to do, because having it just quote unquote modern themed, using the modern quote unquote modern scenery available in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, I just think it would be a very vanilla build. And it would be like a generic amusement park themed section within the theme park. But I wanted to have a specific theme and a story we can tell with it. And I think the story that I want to tell with that area is, we're moving through the timeline of human history, and up until now, it has just been a timeline, nothing too special. But now that we're caught up in the modern era, it's going to be familiar to people and things within recent history. So, enough digression and enough tiptoeing around the subject. I think I want to have it aviation themed, sort of like themed to the first human flight, or just something along that line. Basically, like, aviation, for what it's worth, even though it's over 100 years old at this point, it's still a modern marvel, and it's a thing of the modern world, and aviation is, of course, thrilling. There are plenty of rides themed to aviation. Carowinds just opened a section of the park dedicated to aviation. So I think it's a theme that will work well for the theme park, and it will be thrilling. And there will be a story to tell with it, or a sub story relative to the theme park as a whole. So in that respect, and I also think there are a lot of ways that we'll be able to get creative with it. Um, so, yeah, I'm gonna do an aviation themed area of the park. Not sure what it's gonna include just yet, but now that sort of have that goal to look forward to, I think it'll make it a whole lot easier to start building over there. And yeah, anyway, I just talked over me building a center to our little roundabout, but that's pretty straightforward. I think it speaks for itself, and it looks like we are coming up on the final thing. I just wanted to extend this road that I started building to our main road, and I think I forgot to. Well, we'll see. I think I just extended it along here to the little road that goes next to the parking garage, and didn't actually bring it all the way over to the main road. But it made me realize too, we really have a lot of space to work with in this area. Um, Obviously, in the back corner, the back left corner of the park, we're going to be building our zoo. Um, but there's plenty of space to wrap it around, and we have a lot of space to work with. That's all I'm saying. So, we can extend our resort into some of that area. We can extend the zoo into some of it. We can build a parking lot for each of those things. Might build another parking garage. In fact, I think I want to build another parking garage because, you know, there's going to be a lot of cars coming to this resort property. But anyway, yeah. So it's a good problem to have, having a lot of space. Of course, I do want to build a big food and beverage warehouse too, um, in somewhere in that area. So I've talked about that in the past, and I know it's something that I want to include. Um, but moving forward from now, I think we are going to go back to the park. So the next episode, you'll see us working on our theme park. But that is going to do it for this episode. Hopefully, you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.